This video is about the third skill artists use when drawing, observing angles and proportions. If you want to see my overview of all 5 drawing skills, check out this video. Observing angles and proportions is so important I've spread these ideas over 3 parts to keep the videos from being too long. This is the first part. Angles and proportions are actually central to all the skills. When you're observing an edge, you're doing it in comparison to the other edges around it. Same with observing negative spaces. You're comparing a space with the edges and spaces nearby. But now we're going to focus more intently on the specific angles and proportions that let you place your drawing correctly on the paper and keep the proportions accurate throughout the drawing. First, let's divide both our reference photo and drawing paper in 4 equal areas. Click the link in the description and print out the reference photo. Take 2 blank sheets of printer paper. You'll use one to draw on. Take the second sheet and carefully fold it in half, then fold it in half again. You don't need to unfold it. Use it to mark the center lines on both the reference photo and the drawing paper. Use a straight edge and make them as dark as you like on the reference photo. But on your drawing paper, try to keep them light enough to erase. Have you had that experience where you start your drawing too large and quickly run out of room? So the first question is, how do we place our first marks in the right place so the rest of the drawing all fits on the paper? We get our drawing in the right place by measuring, not using a ruler, but by using objects in our reference photo that are equivalent to the space we need. Throughout this drawing, you will take 2 measurements for each landmark. Yes, you could measure from the edge of the paper to a given landmark edge, and since the reference image and drawing paper are the same size, you could simply use that same measure on your drawing paper. But this is a bad habit that will come back to haunt you. What would you do when your reference photo isn't the same size, or you're drawing from real life? By learning to take 2 equivalent measurements from within your reference image, you'll be developing the muscle memory that will help this become automatic. To save time, I've already found equivalent measurements for this drawing, but you'll go through these same steps with every drawing you do. In general, try to make your pencil marks light and sketchy in these early stages. You won't always get your measurements exact, and it'll save you lots of frustration when you need to erase and remeasure. How do we make sure that all of these things appear on the paper in the same place correctly? So what we're looking for are an equivalent unit of measure, something in here that equals, we're trying to locate this edge right here. And you could just measure this and then go over here to your paper and mark it down, but that's a bad habit because not all of your drawings are going to be the exact same size. What you want to do is find something here that equals this. And I've found that this measure right here, the end of this box, turns out to be the same distance as this, the edge of the paper to the edge of that curve. Take a guess at how far above that line it is, and then I'm going to go over here to my paper, and this lines up here to the edge of the paper right about here. That's about where the edge of that cup is going to be. Now, how do we get this curve here from the top edge of the mug? And I found that measurement to equal about this distance from the bottom of the corner to about where that clasp is. So if I get that distance right there, I find that that's about where that top of the mug is. I'm going to turn my paper here to make this mark, and it's right about here. That's the curve of the mug. It's going to be somewhere like that. What about the right edge? What about this? Where does this fall? How do I find this spot right here? And I find that this distance is equal to about from the edge of the paper right here to where the clasp joins. From here to here is about the same as from here to here. So there's two measurements. So I'm going to keep this and come over here to the edge of the, so from the edge of the paper to, let me double check that, to right about here. So this is about where the edge is. What about this? I could just try to visualize negative space around here, but I want to double check this distance. From here to the edge of the paper is about equal to the corner of this book to where it joins that little V right there, to where the box joins the book. So that tells me where this distance is here. So I've got that, and it is going to be about here, and that's about where this is. What about this distance right here? That is actually equal to about where the corner of the book is to the bottom of this box. So let me try to line that up. So right about there to there is about the same distance as the bottom of the mug to the edge of the paper. So I'm going to turn the paper a little bit to make it easy and just go from here to there. Let me double check that. I think that that's probably pretty good. One more measure. This distance from the bottom corner to the edge of the paper happens to be about the same as this edge of the box again, which was the same as that. So let's take that measure. It's going to be just the side. Let's double check that. So now I know where my limitations are, and now I start looking at the shape of this negative space. And also, there is an angle. I can see that, yes, there's a curve, but there is kind of some part of it that lets me look at that and say, you know, it's like at a 45-degree angle. So picture this empty space here, and it actually lines up to about the corner. So that's helpful. So if I start here at the same, I can see that get that same angle and kind of take a mental snapshot. Hold things in place, take a mental picture before you move the pencil, and get that angle in there. And then take another look, and then take another measure. Remember that angle right there? Visualize that angle. Refine it just a little. That's feeling pretty good. I know where the bottom of this, look at this interesting negative shape around here. I can see this angle of the handle, and I can also, this is close enough, as long as I can envision this curve right here. And it's kind of goes straight down this angle, but now see how it makes this shape right here? I'm going to try to just envision that same shape. This curve, let's look at this negative shape down here around this object. I know where this needs to be. And so I'm just going to lightly sketch that in. And I can also see, like, straight up and down, the innermost part of that curve lines up with where it should join right here. So right about here, right about here. Now, let's use that to get this shape right here. So we've got that. We've got this. Here is another interesting shape right here. Start from the center line over to the curve of this. How does that looks like, take a guess. It's good to try to lightly sketch that in as best you can. And from the center here, look at this empty space in between. Take some measurements when you need to. It's like, I do need to know where that corner is. So it's looking pretty close to, it's a little bit more than that. So if I can envision the edge of the box, how does that compare? The end of the box from, it looks like it hits the center line to the edge. So that same measurement that we took, which is equal to this, lets me get from the center line over to the edge. I was off just a little bit trying to do it without measuring. So again, erase a little bit if you need to. Try to get that in. Now, how far from from this line to that edge right there? That's what we were looking for. It's more than, just a little bit more than the end of the box. So that end of the box is equal to this. I'm going to put that end of the box in from here to here. And that's where the end of the box. So I know that a little bit more than that, probably about like this is what I measured, is where it is from this line to the top corner. Okay, so if I can see this corner, now I can estimate this angle. Compared to the edge of the paper, it's at about this angle. Take that same and lock it in your head or in your mind, in your mind's eye, put it down and give it your best shot. We've been looking at this. What about this little area right in here? You look at the horizontal line and you can see that it's not horizontal. You get that angle in your mind and envision this little negative space, that little puzzle piece right there. Try to match that same angle. Get this angle in. You know the box comes down. It comes down below to about here. It's gonna do this. I'm just a little off. Do a little erasing if you need to. Get that in. So we've got this part of the book right here. And look at this angle. Envision this angle from that corner. So we've got that corner in place, and let's get that angle, and we know it's going to come out a ways. So let's just get the angle sketched in. So from there, it looks like this. And if we've measured this correctly, remember, we've got this, and so we know how that comes down. Let's just extend this where we think it should be. Now let's start envisioning the negative space right here and see, does it match what we're looking at? Yeah, that's feeling pretty good. Let's take this angle. Just give it a good light mark. And now what we're looking at is, look at the negative space right here, this little white piece. It's going to come down in and do this little jig here. We know that this comes down. Okay, we can see this corner, and from here to here, that's about where that angle is. And now let's take a look at this angle and try to get that into place. Whoops. And we know where the edge of this book is, but it doesn't come to a sharp corner like this. It's kind of sloping. It does a little bit of a rounded edge. And so we know that this is the limit. It comes into it, okay? Now, how tall is this from here to here. It's close enough to the same as what we did over here. So if we measured this correctly, let's go for the same measure from here to this corner out here. And the same here. All three of these are going to be the same. Let's double check that. The distance from there should be about the same as there and there. That's feeling pretty good. Double check again. Let's get from there to that feels good, that feels good. And now let's just connect. This should be the same angle as this. And this should be the same as this. And now this top angle, notice that it should be the same as this. All parallel edges will be at the same angle. And that won't be the same as the book because it's oriented differently. All these lines should be parallel. Just match this angle and turn your paper if you need to. It's probably easier to match that angle. And now here's the horizontal line that cuts across, and it creates this little triangle. There's a little triangle right there. So let's just envision that same little triangle right here. And that tells us about where this corner is. And that would be the same distance as here. And it's going to be there. That gives us this line, this edge of the box, should be parallel to this, and I've got it drawn wonky. Look at that little, this is the center of the picture. And I can see this line, there is a little triangle right there. That's good. Let's just clean that up a little. And we know that from here, look at the shape. Let's just estimate the shape of this piece here. And it looks like about that. So we've got a good start as far as where that should be placed. Let's get the edge of this. How far from the center to the edge of the book? That's a critical measure. What can we find to and a lot, you just have to do some kind of guessing and get as close as you can. I'm seeing pretty close the edge of this clasp to the edge of this book, or that bottom corner right there. Just get as close as you can sometimes. With that measure, I know that that's the edge of the book is going to be here, and it's also given me this let's try to get this angle of this book and look at the negative space around here to get that curve. It's not a sharp corner. So just kind of get it in the neighborhood, and then get this angle, this edge angle. And it doesn't meet the vertical line, it's off just a bit, so about this far. That's about what that looks like. And then I know that this angle should meet over here. And let's envision this angle compared to the horizontal edge. Take that. We know that at the top of this curve, it comes over and meets this corner. That distance right there, parallel to this, and at about that same distance, you can see this line, it comes close to this center, not quite. So we've got the front or the top of the book. You can just kind of eyeball this little negative space right here. And we know that this curve of the book, let's look at the negative space right here. Okay, it doesn't go too far. It's at about this angle. I can see that. And then these two lines aren't the same. This, you try to line it up and you can see that it's not, you know, so these lines on this book are not going to be like those. And that's because the angle of this box right here is close enough to the horizontal, but this is more of at an angle. One of the things that you can do is you look at the extremity, this corner to the edge, and what is that angle? And if you've got this placed correctly, it's another way of double checking. Look at the negative space that creates that angle. Let's do the same thing. Now let's just kind of tidy this up. And look at that angle. It's close enough. This angle of the book down here, just try to get it into place. But you'll notice that your drawing, the foundation is starting to fall into place. And now you can just start looking at negative spaces around things to start getting some of the details in place. So look at this negative space here. It'll get you into the neighborhood. And then this negative space. And this is going to be close. Let's try to get a little more detail going into this mug. The curve of this mug matches the curve here of this cylinder. If you could remove the handle or see through it, you can see where that line would go. So let's do the same thing here. We know that from here, matching this curve, this is roughly how that should be. Look at the negative space. Okay, right here, there's a little triangle inside here. So from the horizontal line, I've got a little negative space. Now let's focus on this negative space in here. Now we can start looking at the negative space around this area. Look at this negative space here and there. And with that in place, you can start to It's funny how I quit talking as soon as I start to concentrate, because the verbal side of your brain is not, it's opposite from where the artistic side is. So it's very hard to talk and draw at the same time. Try it sometime. I'm looking at negative space around here to try to get the general placement of things. This feels a little wonky up here, so we erase it and get things where they should go. And now I've got a corner. This little corner here doesn't really happen. So let's just kind of get rid of that. It's being really distracting. Anyway, this gets you well on the way, and just keep on comparing, looking at where lines are for things. See what lines up with other things. Take double measurements and look at the negative space right around right there. That helps you locate where the clasp goes. That gets you started and it lets you see how using angles and proportions gets what you're looking at onto the paper in the same place. Even though we're not discussing technical aspects of drawing, such as building up tone with shading and cross-hatching, these foundational skills will set the stage for these treatments later on. When your foundation under drawing is solid and carefully placed in proportion, these additional technical efforts will be much more rewarding. In the next video, we'll see how to use angles and proportions when drawing in perspective. If you want a more in-depth look at these drawing skills and more exercises, I highly recommend the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. These ideas aren't exclusive to this book. They've been around for many years, but this book pulls together all these ideas and can have a huge impact on your learning to draw. Just to be upfront, this book and author aren't a sponsor. I just wanted to share it with you. On my channel, my videos cover resources, inspiration, and tutorials for artists. Like and subscribe and I'll let you know when new videos are available. If you found it helpful, please share it with any of your friends who are learning to draw. Thanks for watching.